Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Elliott Wave analysis for Bitcoin. It has been a hot minute since we discussed this publicly. It's been about 2 weeks or so. I think it's a great time to follow up on the wave counts and see where we currently stand. We were talking about it from the 100K levels, and now just moments ago, we broke into new all-time highs very briefly. Now, right off the bat, has my views changed? Absolutely not. I believe my conviction is now just starting to get even further solidified. We broke all the barriers as necessary. And let's just do a quick refresher doing a top-down analysis. Let's see where we currently stand on the macro because that is very important, as I still do believe that we are working for an extended fifth wave as a primary narrative. And again, these fifth waves are commonly extended within commodity markets. Not my words, it's within the Elliott Wave Principle literature itself. Bitcoin is arguably also a commodity, so it's well within reason to assume that it's going to be extended. Now, what it doesn't talk about is why, and my logical conclusion as to why it's going to be extended is first, we have the necessary components of the markets from an Elliott Wave perspective for the continuation of the bull run. We have the proper wave structures, meaning that the current move up from the macro low at $15,000 is not showing us any red flags, is not giving us any reasoning on why we're looking for the bull market to abruptly end at these regions or even the $120,000 levels. In fact, my targets lie around $150,000 to the $300,000 levels with a room of margin of error, of course, but it is higher than what a lot of people are anticipating for the bull market to end here. It's also not calling for outrageous targets of around $1 million. I think I lie right in the middle, and I think it's a good idea to start talking about where it's going to be ending with this fifth wave extension. But we're still well within this trend in the beginning. I don't think that we're not even halfway through this. We're just getting this started because we only created this wave 1, 2, and we're now working for this wave 3. And in fact, I think we've gone through pretty much the worst already from a fundamental standpoint. Bitcoin is currently bulletproof from all of these geopolitical issues, tariffs, and etc. And it just seems like because of that, markets are still wanting to shoot for higher levels. And right now, those that missed out on these wave 3s, this is why these wave 5s are also extended, because those that were sidelined, and arguably people are still sidelined here, still anticipating for further confirmation of the actual trend. But this is where the Elliott Wave Theory helps us provide the context of the future waves if we're able to prioritize the proper and logical approach of what we saw in the prior data. And right now, we do have a proper 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's objectively clear, not subjectively, ladies and gentlemen, it's objectively clear that we have a wave 4 in place here of the highest degree, and we're now working for that fifth wave. It just makes the most sense here, in my opinion. So in my opinion, I think that we're still working for it. There's really not much to add into that sense. So let's get into the shorter time frames and see why we were looking for higher levels from this level over here and why this is still going to be a continuation to the upside. Again, nothing has changed in the overall context of things. This move here is still remaining the same. The integrity of this 5-wave move up with the wave 1 being extended. Again, I did a case study on why this wave 1 was extended as well. And then this here was a larger termination of a wave 1 to a degree. So this move here, again, it doesn't really matter how you count it, ladies and gentlemen. I've been getting a lot of DMs if they can see this as a possible triangle idea. In fact, that was one of my primary ideas. We were looking for this to be a triangle, and that can still be fitted absolutely fine. So if you're seeing this as a triangle for wave X, I just like to see things symmetrically from a timing perspective, geometry-wise. This here just fits better as a W, wave ABC here for X, and then an ABC here with an ending diagonal for this wave C to be ended. It just seems best fitted because of the timing structure of it. And again, the most important thing is our support zones. We got supported at the 23.6% and the 38.2% zone, which is the level that we were looking for. It's a highly anticipated zone, although it's a bit shallow for these 1-2s. However, when you're in a very strong bull market and you're actually arguably within the last phase of the bull market, you want these 1-2s to be shallow as possible, which is why we're also potentially seeing this as a 1-2 that's also being very shallow here, working as an intermediate degree here, or even a minor degree, depending on how far this gets extended. We can make that adjustment later. But again, we do have some market inefficiencies that we will talk about, but this is the first scenario, and I do believe that this has a very strong potential to just continue its run, and that we're working for an extension of these smaller wave 3 degrees. that's going to be eventually working for that larger wave 3 on the macro of that larger fifth wave. So that being said, there is a second scenario, which is a little bit of a more logical approach. It does help alleviate some of the internal market inefficiencies. It's really about whether you want to sacrifice the shorter time frames or the larger time frames. But here, as you can see, we had that 5-wave move off the lows. That usually will either lead you up into a wave 1 or a wave A, as that is the actionary wave that you want to be looking for as the beginning phase of either a correction or an impulse. And right now, we don't have any confirmation of both of them. We have a confirmation of this being either a corrective structure or a beginning of a 1-2, 1-2, or a 1-2, which is the primary idea that I'm fitting, and we're working for a 3-4-5 just for organizational structure purposes. But in my opinion, I do think that this idea working as a possible flat idea is a possibility as well, because the ultimate confirmation, in my opinion, is going to be that $117,000 levels, as this idea is not confirmed. So we have to have this alternative idea that we may be working for a larger B wave here, and that B wave expanded pocket zone is going to be a very important level, and that $117,000 levels is going to be the ultimate confirmation on whether this is going to be that real extension or a rejection zone over here, because pretty much we are still working correctively. Again, we need a follow-up more than anything else. And right now, as we also predicted this being the major low, it still doesn't take us away from the actual larger narrative that we're working for mega higher levels. And this is going to be just the same idea. It's just working for a larger distribution idea here, that we are just working for one more low before working to the upside. Now, bears are probably salivating over this scenario, but don't get twisted in a knot here, because there is a problem with this scenario in itself, which is the timing aspect. This one too, of course, this is just more of an idealized C wave structure that's going to be a follow-up. But again, markets don't play out perfectly. We can't assume that markets are going to dump this fast. And even if it were, we do have a problem of this being larger in time than this structure here. Well, actually pretty much close in time, but usually you want these lower degree wave 1-2s to be as small as possible, which is why the other scenario, the first scenario I just showed, we want this wave 1 to be here, and we do have a pretty good solidification of that as well, because we have this protected low as the ultimate validation anyways. And this is the reason why I don't think that this scenario has too much weight right now, but I do think that it is a possibility is what I'm saying, and it's important for me to make sure to let everyone know that this $170,000 levels is the last final confirmation of anything basically. And if that's the case and we break that level, 100% for sure we're working for an impulse to the upside. So if I had a gun pointed to my head, I would choose this idea here, even though this structure here may not have the best portraying look. We have this being a very strong market inefficiency of the shorter time frame, which I will go over in just a second. But we do have a possible combination idea here as a WXY, as this being the 1-2, and then we're working for the wave 3, 4, 5 to follow suit very soon if the markets are still heavily bullish. So let's go into the micro timeframes and talk about why and hows and what's going on and everything, why I'm seeing this as a possible combination idea. Well, first of all, the reason why I'm seeing a combination idea is because that's pretty much the only way to count this if you're seeing this as a 1-2. I was having a hard time or difficult time to count this as a 1-2 here. We had the necessary 1-2 component here. I was hoping to see an intermediate degree of a 1-2 being created here, but this distribution here, ladies and gentlemen, is just so difficult to count, and it's more labeled correctively than it is impulsively. So we have to label this overall structure as a combination idea as the first nested 1-2, where this W wave is a flat idea. We have a long wave A, a short wave B, and a short wave C for this wave X. Again, not uncommon. Up to this point is fine. And then a triangle for this wave Y. This is where the problem comes in. Usually you don't see these combination ideas, and most of you know, me even being an advocate of the Elliott Wave Theory, I believe there are a lot of drawbacks, as there's no real statistical approach on how strong these combination ideas do play out. And there's no real statistical data on how much these actual combination ideas play out. But it is there. And I think from a validity perspective, since the rules and guidelines is the foundation of the Elliott Wave Theory, we do have validity in terms of this being played out. But there are some market inefficiencies, which is that this 1-2 is extremely, ladies and gentlemen, way too shallow, in my opinion, to be of any kind. And this is the reason why this market inefficiency is giving me problems and, making that back and forth logical swap conclusion between the first and the second scenario. But again, this is just one market inefficiency of the shorter time frames. And then we also do have a problem of Fibonacci levels, because if we take it from the termination point and the origin of this wave X, we can see that it's not even hitting the projected target of the 138.2. It's surpassing it. And we also have another problem of the 161.8 even being surpassed. That is very forced, in my opinion, for having a X wave this high. But again, we do have the necessary components of the follow-up, and we did have a follow-up of a breakout from that triangle, and now we just need a little bit of more conclusion on how this is going to be actually following up. So that being said, I do think that this is a possibility if we're taking into the context of the larger macro time frames of everything else, because this 1-2 combination, there was a time and instance where we actually did observe that, which is this region over here. We were going back and forth between a combination idea of a 1-2 being here, and it's basically the same exact idea that we had playing out, meaning that we saw this WXY structure being a WX and then a triangle for this wave 2 as well that helped us alleviate some of this. And look at what happened here. We pumped out of that region very, very nicely. So even in hindsight, we can label this as a structure here. But again, I even made that adjustment that this was going into a leading diagonal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, doesn't really matter. I think that as long as we had some kind of use case study to fall back on and understand that it does play out on these shorter time frames, these micro time frames, it's absolutely possible. So this is the reason why I'm accepting the possibility that a combination idea is here, even though this X wave might be too high, and we also have that triangle being here, and the overall context of things. This WXY is very rare, but it does fit into the overall idea that we are in the late phase of the bull market, and these obscure patterns could be playing out. So let's not be too subjective on this idea. I think the overall context of just moving higher is the most important idea there. And again, we can make that adjustment very easily. We're still utilizing this triangle for a wave X here. If we're seeing this as a corrective structure, like I said, this is the second scenario. This ABC going into W. X is now labeled as a triangle, and we're now working for an ABC here. This is the more logical conclusion when it comes to the Elliott wave context of things, if you want to be following the more logical approach. So if you're following strictly the logical approach of the shorter time frames, this would be the better scenario. But again, do you want to make this internal sacrifice of the shorter time frames, or do you want to make the internal sacrifice of the larger time frame that this 1-2 is going to be far too long in time and markets don't play out perfectly? This will be extended in time, in my opinion. That is going to be larger than the parent degree. Again, doesn't break the rules and guidelines. You just want to follow as best as you can with the guidelines that these nested 1-2s or the smaller degree 1-2s want to be smaller than the parent degree. So lots of technical things in this video, ladies and gentlemen. Very difficult, right? But let me just give you my conclusion, which is number one, I think that if I had a gun pointed to my head, I'm just going to keep it very simple, that I do believe that we are going to be working for higher levels, number one. And if I had to choose a scenario between scenario number one, which is this 1-2 being a combination idea, this is the scenario that I would choose, as I just want to see it go up from here. These shallow 1-2 pullbacks, this is the narrative that we've been looking for. And again, we have a lot of confirmations to break before it actually turns bearish. And then again, this idea here, although logically it fits better as a WXY, I don't think that the larger context of things could be a good sacrificial move for what could be this larger move. And I think that this is the reason why we just want to be continuing the idea of an impulse to the upside as best as we can. We just need the proper follow-up. Hopefully that was helpful. Again, I'm choosing this scenario as my primary idea. Things can change, of course, and we have something to cushion on, which is the alternative flat idea. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll see you guys in the next video. This was the detailed update for Bitcoin. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a fantastic rest of the week. Bye-bye.